Ms. Stefanik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for your thoughtful testimony. Earlier on in this Congress, last March, we had a hearing with Ms. Wormuth, the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, and I asked her a question related to what is the administration's policy towards Syria. And it was quite clear in her testimony that there was no coherent strategy towards Syria, and I think that is clearly still the case today. I agree with your assessment that we must have a Syria-first approach to much of the regional instability in the Middle East, but one significant player that has not been brought up today is the role of Russia. I'd love to get your feedback on the fact that the vacuum that the United States has left has allowed Russia to fill that vacuum, propping up the Assad regime, and how that will play into the geopolitics of phasing Assad out.
So I'll start. You know, I think that Vladimir Putin's main objective, there's a lot of different objectives in what he did, but his main objective was to prop up Assad, who, when Putin made his move, was really, Assad was at his weakest point since the fall of 2012. And Putin believes that he needs to prop up Assad because Putin's concerned that if Assad goes, there'll be chaos in Syria and there'll be more running room for ISIS. And like Robert, I don't necessarily believe that, right? It depends on what comes next, right? So what we need is a transition from Assad to a government that all Syrians can agree with. That's the transition we need. And if that happens, then Putin's wrong. Then Assad going is not a bad thing. Assad going is a good thing. And what Putin has done is now made that potential transition much more difficult, because Assad was on the verge, right, of falling essentially, and allowing us to get to that new government, right? And now Russia has made that so much more difficult. And what he's done is also now made Russia a player at the table. Right, so Russia's now going to get to determine how that negotiation goes because of what he did. I'll let others comment as well.
Yeah, I agree with all that, and I don't think our interests are very well aligned with Russia. There is some commonality, but I don't think it's as much as some have said, and I don't think we should be deterred by. From our objectives in Syria, from the relatively modest Russian intervention. If you look at the few thousand troops and 36 aircraft and the number of strike sorties, you know, it's not the world's biggest combat power there. And so there's a lot of Syria they can't control. And, you know, our policy will drive, you know, having had experience with the Russians in Afghanistan with a much, much bigger force, this is pretty small by comparison.
Ambassador Ford.
We need to get to peace talks. And getting to peace talks by itself isn't the answer. That's just a venue. What really is needed is deep concessions, deep compromises on the two sides to the conflict, the Assad government and its opposition. I think the Russian intervention has made it infinitely harder to get the concessions needed from the Assad side of the table, which will impede getting to a new national unity government. And so therefore I don't see that what the Russians have done so far is very positive. If I thought the Russians were going to use their new and improved leverage against Assad in the peace talks, then I would feel better. But the fact that they're using cluster bombs, the fact that they are targeting civilian areas regularly, the fact that they are targeting aid convoys, humanitarian aid convoys regularly, this does not look like a Russian policy designed to extract concessions out of Bashar al-Assad to advance a peace process.
Great. And in my last 39 seconds, I want to shift gears here. One of the proposals that's been introduced by some of the leaders, military leaders, General Petraeus is one. Do you think an additional 4-star commander headquarters under CENTCOM is necessary for effective command and control of Operation Inherent Resolve?
Well, we have a unified three-star now with General Sean McFarland, who is a very, very capable officer who, as a colonel, led the operations in Ramadi in 07. You know, we don't go to war anymore with our combatant commands. We form a task force underneath them. So whether that's three-star or four-star is really a function of bureaucratic politics and the weight in the building. You know, I guess I'm more agnostic than picking the right 3 or 4 star that will get us to victory.
Any other feedback? No. Thanks.